February 1997, winds from Lake Erie blew through the old streets of Detroit, carrying a bone-chilling cold and the faint whistle of metal. In the small house on Lyndon Street, the kitchen light was still on, but the bed of 12-year-old boy Ethan Rowe was empty. The back door was slightly ajar, snow covering the small footprints leading out to the backyard before they vanished into the darkness. In the basement, the new wooden planks still smelled of cement, and somewhere echoed the sound of dripping water. When the clock struck 9 p.m., the mother, Patrice, called 911, her voice trembling, "My son is missing." The police arrived, but the snow had already covered every trace. They only found a bicycle leaning against the fence, and the warmth that had just faded in the cold house. No one expected that night would open one of the coldest and most haunting cases in Michigan. A child vanished right from his own home. No clues, no explanations, only the silence of the basement. The search lasted months, then years, leaving dusty files in the Detroit police archives. 26 years later, when the cold case unit was re-established, a young investigator accidentally reopened the old evidence box, where there was a PVC pipe labeled exercise tool. From there the buried secrets gradually emerged: dried blood drops, scribbled notes, fuzzy VHS tape segments, piecing together a picture of the crime buried right under the house foundation. This story is not just about the disappearance of a boy. It is the journey of justice, of science, and of people who refuse to let silence cover the truth. The Detroit night of 1997 froze a life, but it also began a hunt spanning over 2 decades, where justice was finally awakened by the very evidence thought to be forgotten. Before diving deep into this shocking true story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love these journeys to uncover forgotten justice, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next part. Detroit, winter 1997. Snow fell quietly on the gray, misty streets, wind blowing through rows of old brick houses, creating an endless long hiss. Inside the small house in the Brightmoor neighborhood, a dim yellow light cast down on the cold dining table. Ethan Rowe, the 12-year-old boy, skinny build, short brown hair, sat silently in front of his cooled plate of food. The air in the room was thick with tension, the light clink of a spoon against the plate sounding like a small shock amid the long silence. At the head of the table, Leon Rowe, his father, frowned at the report card just picked up from school, his voice dry when mentioning physical exercises and discipline. Patrice, Ethan's stepmother, tried to avoid her husband's gaze, her hand twisting a glass of cold water. The boy stood up without a word, heading toward the stairs leading down to the basement, where he often trained at his father's request. The sound of small footsteps faded, disappearing under the wooden floor, leaving a heavy silence. Wind whistled through the window cracks, making the candle on the shelf flicker. Patrice glanced at the clock. It was past 9, and she still heard no sound from below. She walked to the basement door, cracking it open. A rush of cold air hit her. From down there rose a musty smell. A faint clink like metal hitting the floor, rang out then went silent. "Ethan," she called, her voice trembling slightly. No one answered. Patrice flipped the switch, the weak light casting down the old stairs, but the darkness below remained thick. She descended a few steps, only seeing Ethan's small sneakers neatly placed by the stairs, and his sweater draped over the railing. No response, no breathing, only the wind whistling through the back door crack. When she stepped out into the yard, she realized the back door was ajar, white snow having spilled over the threshold, covering the floor with small footprints fading toward the backyard. Cold wind whipped her face, snow clinging to her hair. Patrice looked around in panic. No figure, no sound except the wind hissing through the trees. She called his name once more, her voice hoarse in the night. No reply. Fear flooded her, heart pounding as she backed away, trying to compose herself. Inside the house, the wall clock chimed the hour, the second hand emitting a dry ticking. Patrice hurried to the landline phone, her hand trembling as she dialed. When the dispatcher's voice came through the receiver, Her voice broke. "My son has disappeared." The sound of police sirens echoed through the Detroit winter night, blending with the howling wind over snow-covered roofs. Just over 10 minutes after Patrice called 911, flashing red and blue lights reflected off the old brick walls of the row house. The first 2 officers on scene documented the area and split up to check around the house. Patrice stood trembling, clutching Ethan's sweater. She recounted that the boy had only gone down to the basement for a bit, then was gone. Leon appeared behind her, his face weary, voice dry and cold. "He often gets sulky and goes out." When asked about the basement door, he hesitated before saying, "I don't remember." About an hour later, the Brightmoor area lit up with flashlights and spotlights. Neighbors were woken, many bringing lamps and gloves to join the police in searching the backyard, wooden fence, and the empty lot behind the house. Ethan's small footprints led to the backyard, but were nearly covered by fresh snow. Police dogs barked loudly at the base of a maple tree near the fence. There they found Ethan's bicycle, tires caked in mud, seat covered in a thin layer of snow. Patrice collapsed when she saw it. No signs of struggle, no blood, just the bike placed neatly, as if someone had left in silence. The search team expanded the radius around the neighborhood. They shone lights along the ditch banks, through abandoned houses, the park along Lyndon Road. Police dogs barked multiple times toward the small woods near the Rouge River, but strong winds broke the scent. One officer found a few fabric scraps stuck with duct tape near the fence, but couldn't determine the origin. Police collected everything, sealing the bicycle. Leon stood on the porch, hands in his coat pockets, gaze distant. He answered sparingly, showing no emotion when speaking of his missing son. One officer noted he seemed annoyed at being asked too many questions. Patrice, on the other hand, kept crying, clinging to the window watching the moving lights in the snowy yard. Near 3 in the morning, the search team had covered the entire neighborhood. No one had seen Ethan after 8 p.m. One neighbor reported seeing the basement light at the row house flicker on and off several times between 8 and 9, then go out completely. Leon said it might be the breaker, offering no further explanation. Snow fell heavier, covering all footprints. Police paused the search, due to cold winds and poor visibility. Patrice sat in the patrol car, wrapped in a blanket, stating that Ethan was afraid of the dark, and always carried a red flashlight when going out, but the flashlight was nowhere to be found. One officer noted that detail. In the morning, local radio aired news of 12-year-old boy missing in Brightmoor. Ethan's photo in his school uniform, printed from a class picture, was posted around the neighborhood. Police returned to the row house, checking the basement. The space was damp, heavy with mold smell, containing a few rugs, exercise equipment, PVC pipes, and metal bars. No signs of disturbance. The police dog reacted strongly again, barking toward the corner wall, then going quiet. They documented everything but found nothing suspicious. Daylight fully broke, snow still blanketing Brightmoor white. Police packed up, sealing the area around the backyard. Patrice sat on the steps, her gaze vacant as she watched the bicycle loaded onto the evidence truck. Leon stood behind her, silent. A young officer glanced at the tightly shut basement door, his hand sticky with gray dust from the knob, then noted it before leaving. The search ended by late morning. The report stated, no signs of struggle detected, no evidence of crime. Ethan Rowe, 12 years old, missing, cause unknown. Over Detroit's sky, snow continued to fall, erasing the last traces of that fateful night. As snow still blanketed Detroit streets, the city police department officially opened file #970329, classified missing juvenile. Ethan Rowe, 12 years old. The first document was the scene report from the previous night, accompanied by a map of the Brightmoor area and coordinates of where the bicycle was found. The area police chief signed the order to initiate the preliminary investigation within 48 hours. The detective assigned to the file was Sergeant Miller, who had over 20 years of experience with child runaways. Miller started by taking statements from Leon and Patrice. Leon said Ethan left the dinner table at 8:30 p.m., went down to the basement to exercise, then went out for fresh air around 9. Patrice insisted she still heard noises from the basement until nearly 10, and when she went down to check, Ethan was gone. The nearly 1-hour discrepancy led Miller to note time discrepancy. Needs clarification. Leon described his son as stubborn, quick to anger, while Patrice said he had recently been afraid to go down to the basement. The father's cold responses caught Miller's attention, but there was no basis for suspicion yet. That afternoon, the forensics team returned to the house. Snow had stopped falling, sunlight shining on the backyard where the bicycle was found. In the basement, they discovered a newly erected wooden partition, surface still smelling of paint. Leon explained he had just fixed it to prevent dampness and cover the water pipes. When Miller asked for material receipts, he said he had thrown them away. Police noted this detail but didn't dismantle the partition without a warrant. In the garage area, an officer found a PVC pipe over a meter long, end scratched, silver paint. Leon said it was Ethan's exercise tool. No blood or foreign substances were found, so the evidence was tagged, exercise pipe, non-criminal. Additionally, the basement had a few rugs, weights, empty food boxes, all photographed and documented, no signs of struggle. The forensics report concluded, no evidence of crime. 2 days later, police interviewed neighbors. No one heard cries for help. Only one mentioned the basement light going out earlier than usual. The summary report leaned toward the possibility of Ethan running away on his own. In the file, Miller noted, possible runaway. Patrice frequently visited the station for updates, but there was no new information. Leon called to request permission to repair the basement due to leaking pipes. Miller refused, requiring the scene to remain unchanged. 3 days later, with no leads, the search suspension order was issued. All evidence, the bicycle, fabric scraps with duct tape, PVC pipe, was transferred to storage locker #47. In an internal memo, Miller added a short line, verify father's activities between 20 o'clock, 22 o'clock. No one read that notation closely. The disappearance was quickly overshadowed amid the slew of other February files. The press only ran a small inside-page story, 12-year-old boy missing in Brightmoor, suspected runaway. No press conference, no large-scale search campaign. When asked, the police spokesperson said briefly, the case is still under investigation. By month's end, Leon was permitted repairs. An officer supervised the removal of a few boards, found nothing unusual, and left. Patrice was nearly broken, rarely going out. Neighbors gradually stopped gossiping, only occasionally mentioning the boy who vanished in the snow. In April 1997, file #970-329 was stamped inactive, unresolved. On the last page, Miller wrote, no evidence of crime, case suspended. Ethan's class photo was clipped to the file cover, his bright smiling face, amid the cold paper, becoming the boy's final image in the investigator's eyes. After the #970-329 file was transferred to inactive status, all the evidence from the Ethan Rowe disappearance case was moved to evidence storage locker 47 on the west side of Detroit. The bicycle, the cloth scrap with duct tape, and the PVC pipe were all labeled, sealed in plastic bags, and placed on the non-criminal evidence shelf. No one thought these items would ever hold value again. In 1997, DNA testing was still very expensive. The department's forensics lab only prioritized cases with deceased victims. The file cover clearly stated, no funds for DNA testing, The dried brown stain at the end of the PVC pipe was not considered blood, so the sample was not sent for testing. Per regulations, evidence of this type only needed to be stored for a minimum of 10 years before it could be destroyed, if no new requests came in. In the years that followed, the Ethan disappearance gradually faded from memory. The Rowe family's home was sold, and the basement was repainted. Leon moved to Ohio. Patrice left Detroit. Occasionally, the hotline received tips about seeing a boy who looks like Ethan at a shopping mall or bus station, but there was no verifiable evidence. Every call was noted as unconfirmed sighting and filed away. In 2005, during an inventory of the evidence storage, an employee discovered the file was missing a document. Exercise schedule, handwritten. That was Ethan's workout calendar, once seized by Sergeant Miller from the garage, with the final line Day 7, punishment. The missing document was noted, but no further action was taken, because the case was closed. In 2008, Detroit cut its budget, and many old cases had their storage transferred or unimportant evidence destroyed. Part of the Ethan file was moved to storage in Lansing, while the physical evidence remained in Locker 47. The PVC pipe had now faded, the plastic bag had torn edges, and the seal code was nearly illegible. No one opened it to check. Miller retired, and Ethan's file was lumped into the juvenile missing 1990s category. When the storage system began digitizing in 2010, incomplete data entry caused the case to be noted as no biological evidence. That error made the Ethan case officially disappear from the list of cases eligible for DNA testing. In internal meetings, Ethan's name was only occasionally mentioned in passing before being brushed aside. No signs of violence, one officer said, just a runaway case. No one objected. Out there Brightmoor changed too. The lot behind the row house grew overgrown with weeds. The utility pole once plastered with missing child flyers, now held only faded paper frames. To the new residents, the name Ethan Rowe meant nothing. In the dark corner of Locker 47, the old sealed bag lay still, inside it a discolored plastic pipe with a brown stain no one noticed. Next to it, the gap from the missing workout schedule still left a missing document mark in the inventory log. And for over 20 years, those small clues, the PVC pipe and the workout schedule, lay quietly among thousands of other pieces of evidence, waiting for the day someone patient enough would reopen the thick layer of dust covering them. From 1998 to 2010, file hash 970329 was hardly mentioned by anyone. The final notes on the Ethan Rowe case lay dormant in storage, alongside hundreds of other unsolved disappearances. No new witnesses, no additional discoveries. Each inventory season, employees just marked, "No update," and closed the cabinet. The Rowe family quickly fell apart. Patrice left Detroit at the end of 1998, moving in with her sister in Toledo. She never responded to interviews or contacted the press. In her address change request, Patrice only wrote "Want to start over." Leon sold the house in Brightmoor, telling neighbors he couldn't bear the old memories. He left Michigan, moving to Dayton, Ohio, to work at a machine shop. There Leon lived quietly, rarely mentioning his son. His new neighbors only learned he'd lost a child when they saw a small photo tucked in his wallet, its corner worn from handling. The Detroit police also rarely revisited the case. The department faced a slew of new homicides, with budgets and manpower short. When computerization began, the Ethan case was entered into the closed, juvenile missing category. His name became just one line in the database, with a few brief words: runaway, not located. In Brightmoor, the old Rowe family home changed hands 3 times. The final buyers, a middle-aged couple, repainted the entire basement, replacing the wood paneling and flooring. None of them knew there had ever been a disappearance there. The old neighbors gradually moved away. The once peaceful neighborhood became rundown, with tall grass, many houses abandoned. The Ethan case only lingered in the memories of a few elderly folks around the block, who occasionally brought it up like a distant sad story. That boy back then, only 12 years old. Each year Detroit added dozens more disappearances, and Ethan was just a number in the statistics. The missing kid search program once sent automated notices to the Rowe family, but the contact address was no longer valid. No one responded. An old photo of Ethan, edited with age progression software in 2003 to show what his face might look like at 18 if alive, was only stored in the internal system, never publicized. Occasionally, someone called the police station saying they'd seen a boy like Ethan in the Lansing or Grand Rapids area. Every tip was checked, and all turned out wrong. The unconfirmed note repeated. By 2006, the department officially stopped periodic updates for case hash 970329. A simple line in the log: case remains inactive, no new leads. Leon remarried in Dayton in 2004. His new wife knew nothing of his past, until she saw an old photo box in the garage. Inside were pictures of Leon with a small boy smiling on a green bicycle. When asked, Leon replied curtly, "My son. He's been gone a long time." That ended all questions. Patrice lived reclusively in Toledo, working at a small sewing shop. She had no contact with Leon, and never returned to Detroit. A few times, local reporters tracked her down, wanting to interview her about Ethan, but Patrice refused, saying she'd already told the police everything she needed to say. The community gradually forgot the disappearance of the 12-year-old boy. The old newspaper clippings faded, surviving only in a few microfilm scraps at the city library. No one left flowers or lit candles in memorial at the old house. Time and snow had erased all traces. By 2010, as Detroit digitized all old files, the Ethan case had data entered incorrectly. The evidence section was typed incompletely, listed as none. Case number hash 970329, thus vanished from the list of cases with biological evidence. That small error ensured the case was no longer in the category for automatic DNA testing. In the new system, Ethan's name only appeared as a small row among thousands of anonymous disappearances. In evidence locker 47, the PVC pipe and old evidence still lay in the shadows. Thick dust covered them, the seal labels faded. They were moved to a high shelf, stacked next to boxes from the 1980s. No one remembered why it was there, or which case it belonged to. 20 years later, the Ethan Rowe case was reduced to a few lines in the storage catalog. Missing child, last seen 1997, case inactive. The 12-year-old boy from back then had been swallowed by time along with Detroit's cold snow, leaving a quiet void among the dusty old files, where everything seemed closed forever. In the spring of 2023, the Michigan State Police announced the revival of the Cold Case Unit, after more than a decade on hiatus. The unit was funded by federal grants, aimed at reviewing unsolved files, especially child disappearances with remaining biological evidence. In the list of thousands of cases from the late 20th century, the name Ethan Rowe appeared as a faint file, opened in 1997, concluded possible runaway. No updates since 2010. The new unit lead, Detective Dana Ruiz, a former forensic specialist, known for her meticulousness and patience. In the first meeting, she tasked the team with filtering all unresolved juvenile files to find cases with original evidence still intact. A technician named Mark Ellison reported that file hash 970329, Ethan Rowe, had an entry for PVC pipe, non-criminal evidence, that had never been tested. Ruiz followed up, "Does that evidence still exist?" Ellison checked the storage database, confirming evidence locker 47, preservation status, not rechecked since 2008. Ruiz immediately requested a physical inspection. 2 days later, she and the technician arrived at locker 47 on the outskirts of Detroit, where thousands of old evidence crates were stored. The storage system was digitized, but many 1990s files were still handwritten. After nearly 2 hours of searching, they found a gray cardboard box with a faded label, Row_E97. Inside were 3 evidence bags, the bicycle, the cloth scrap, and a PVC plastic pipe, about 1.2 meters long, the seal bag intact, but the plastic clouded. The lead stamped case number was faint, but it matched the 1997 inventory. Ruiz carefully opened the bag in sterile conditions, noting a dull brown streak about 3 centimeters long at the pipe's end, possibly rust, possibly dried blood. She stared at the evidence, then said softly, "26 years and no one's touched it." Per protocol, retesting required approval from Wayne County Court. Ruiz drafted a petition to reopen the case, citing physical evidence never DNA tested, potential to contain biological traces. The file was fast-tracked via the state's Cold Case DNA Initiative program. 3 weeks later, the Wayne County prosecutor signed off, approved for forensic testing. Ruiz sent the PVC pipe to the Lansing Forensics Lab, which specialized in old DNA testing, using touch DNA techniques, a method that could extract epithelial cells from object surfaces even after decades in storage. Attached was a request for trace analysis via mass spectrometry, to identify any organic substances or chemical residues. While awaiting results, Ruiz reviewed the entire original file. She spotted several anomalies, inconsistencies between Leon and Patrice's statements, notes on the unremoved basement wood paneling, and Detective Miller's final 1997 line. "Verify father's activities 20 o'clock, 22 o'clock. Ruiz highlighted that line in red. She also noted the detail exercise schedule, missing, the document lost during the 2005 inventory. In the evidence catalog, that line was crossed out in blue ink. Someone had removed it from the file without explanation. The reinvestigation warrant was signed on March 26, 2023, marking the first time in over 2 decades that Ethan Rowe's name returned to the open cases list. Ruiz opened the digital file, entering a new note, "Reopened due to untested evidence. Potential biological trace found on PVC pipe." She also reached out to former department personnel, including Harold Dunn, who had overseen evidence storage in the early 2000s. Over the phone, he confirmed, "I remember that plastic pipe. Back then they said no blood, so no testing." Ruiz asked about the missing workout schedule. Dunn just chuckled. "That year lots of files got bundled and moved. Lost paperwork was common." 7 days later, the Lansing lab sent a preliminary report. The PVC pipe end held a viable biological sample consisting of epithelial cell traces and dried protein stains. Ruiz requested a CODIS national database match, but since Ethan had never had an official sample taken while alive, she had to request access to old medical records for an indirect sample, hair or baby teeth on file. Detroit Children's Hospital confirmed they still held a 1992 blood sample from his vaccination records. That became the baseline for comparison. When sending the sample, Ruiz labeled it Rowe case, high priority. She felt an inexplicable hunch. Cases thought long dead sometimes just needed one small piece of evidence to wake up. On her computer screen, the line "Ethan Rowe, missing 1997, reinvestigation pending" glowed like a reminder that time, no matter how long, couldn't erase the truth. In evidence locker 47, the spot where the PVC pipe had lain was now cleared, the old non-criminal evidence label peeled off. 26 years later, that evidence was finally treated as proof in a true criminal case, and the name Ethan Rowe once again stepped into the light of justice. 6 weeks after the PVC pipe was sent for testing, Detective Dana Ruiz received an email from the Lansing Forensics Laboratory. The subject line was simple: DNA analysis. Case hash 970329, Rowe Ethan. She opened the file, and 3 pages of cold reports appeared, but just the first few lines made Ruiz hold her breath. The analysis results identified 2 different DNA samples on the end of the PVC pipe. The first sample matched exactly with the children's blood profile stored at Detroit Children's Hospital in 1992. the DNA of Ethan Rowe. The second sample matched the DNA profile in the state database. Leon Rowe, the father. The conclusion was brief. 2 contributors identified. Primary, victim E. Rowe. Secondary paternal match L. Rowe. Ruiz sat silently. 26 years, a case once considered runaway child now suddenly turned into suspected homicide. She reread Sergeant Miller's original 1997 report, which noted, need to verify father's activities between 20 o'clock, 22 o'clock. Back then, no one paid attention to that line. Now everything was clear. The very next morning, Ruiz met with Wayne County Prosecutor Eric Vaughn to present the report. Upon seeing the analysis results, Vaughn simply said, if the father's DNA is there with the son's blood, this is no longer a missing person case. He requested that Ruiz submit a written request to reclassify the case from missing juvenile to homicide, cold case reclassification. Within 48 hours the approval order was signed. The Ethan Rowe file was officially returned to open active investigation status. Ruiz immediately ordered a full review of the old files. The unusual details kept piling up. Leon and Patrice's statements contradicted each other about the time of Ethan's disappearance. The newly built wooden partition in the basement had never been dismantled. Ethan's exercise schedule sheet was missing during storage. What had seemed like a simple case now revealed many gaps. She contacted forensic technician Mark Ellison in Lansing for confirmation. Could that amount of DNA survive for 26 years? Ellison replied, if sealed dry, absolutely. Time doesn't erase traces. Ruiz nodded slightly. The evidence had been there for years. It just hadn't been opened by anyone. Ruiz's official report to the state of Michigan stated, the victim's and father's DNA samples both appeared on the evidence PVC pipe. This is direct evidence that the victim suffered injuries in the home. Recommend redirecting the investigation toward murder. After receiving approval, Prosecutor Vaughn ordered the collection of Leon Rowe's personal records, residence, and movement history since 1997. Dayton, Ohio police, where Leon currently resides, were requested to cooperate. A secret surveillance warrant was issued to gather data on his daily activities and genetics. Meanwhile, the Lansing laboratory continued detailed analysis. In addition to the blood sample, they discovered grayish-green fabric fibers stuck to the end of the PVC pipe, matching the description of the gym shirt Ethan was wearing the night he disappeared. Though not enough for a conclusion yet, this result reinforced the hypothesis that the PVC pipe was the murder weapon. At Cold Case Unit headquarters, no one spoke loudly when Ruiz announced the DNA results. The atmosphere was thick. A case once dismissed as runaway child was now confirmed as a family homicide. Ruiz didn't feel victorious, just a chill running down her spine. She knew the next step would be very difficult. Leon Rowe had lived freely for over 2 decades, and the only evidence was an old plastic pipe. That evening, Ruiz stayed in the office alone. She opened the old photo of Ethan again, the 12-year-old boy with messy hair, bright eyes, innocent smile. Under the photo was Miller's handwritten note, no signs of violence. She crossed out those 2 words, and replaced them with a new line in red ink. Evidence confirms violence. Case shifted to homicide investigation. Outside, snow began to fall, as cold as the night the boy disappeared in 1997. Ruiz stood up, whispering to herself, "We'll find the truth, Ethan." And from that moment, the Cold Case Unit officially entered the first criminal investigation phase, after 26 years of silence. In June 2023, less than a month after the DNA results confirmed Leon Rowe's involvement with his son's blood, an unexpected call took the case in a new direction. The caller was Thomas Avery, the current owner of the old Rowe family home in Brightmoor, Detroit. While renovating the basement, he discovered a discolored patch of cement wall that looked hastily patched. When he tapped it lightly with a hammer, a hollow sound echoed from inside. Avery stopped, called the police. When Detective Dana Ruiz and the forensics team arrived, they saw a crack on the wall that had just been widened, revealing a narrow cement cavity inside, about half a meter deep. The small space was pitch black, emitting a heavy damp smell, tight enough for only a child to crouch in. Inside, they found an old plastic bin, a few frayed blankets, a rusted dumbbell bar, a few empty canned food tins, and a wooden plank with faint small footprints imprinted. On the inside face of the wall, someone had carved words with a sharp object. "I've done 500 reps, Dad." The room fell silent. Ruiz read each word slowly, a lump forming in her throat. She immediately sealed the scene, ordered the entire basement cordoned off, and called in the Michigan State Forensics team for support. Under the cold lights, the technicians photographed, collected each piece of evidence, numbered it, and bagged it in sterile pouches. When they opened the plastic bin lid, inside was only dust and decayed fabric scraps. One technician spotted a small bone fragment, the size of a pinky finger, mixed in the dry soil. The item was carefully collected. No one dared say it out loud, but every eye shared the same thought. This could be what remained of Ethan Rowe. 3 days later, the preliminary report from the Lansing Forensics Lab confirmed it was human bone, belonging to a minor. Ruiz barely slept, waiting for the DNA results. A week later, the official notification was sent to the cold case unit. Match confirmed. DNA consistent with victim Ethan Rowe, 99.96%. 26 years after the snowy night of 1997, Ethan Rowe had finally been found, right in the house where he once lived. Ruiz reported the results to prosecutor Eric Vaughn. An emergency meeting was held at the Michigan Cold Case Unit headquarters, with state representatives and the FBI in attendance. Ruiz presented. The evidence included the plastic bin, old blankets, exercise equipment, empty cans, and the carved inscription. The report emphasized, evidence at the scene indicates the victim was confined and abused in the basement. The inscription, "I've done 500 reps, Dad," may refer to repeated physical punishment, consistent with Leon's old statement that Ethan exercised in the basement. The forensics team continued examining the house structure. Ground-penetrating radar detected an anomaly under the cement floor. When they drilled a probe, they found 2 more small bone fragments, a child's plastic button, and grayish-green fabric fibers, matching the color of the gym shirt Ethan wore in the missing person report. All were sampled and sent to Lansing. Police immediately cordoned off the house as a crime scene. News leaked quickly. Evening broadcast showed images of 4180 Broad Street house, once the 1997 disappearance scene, now back on the front page. Reporters flooded the Brightmoor neighborhood, interviewing residents. An elderly neighbor said, "We always thought the boy ran away. Never imagined he was right here all that time." Ruiz requested withholding the identity until all tests were complete. She also contacted Patrice, Ethan's mother, who lives in Toledo, to break the news. Patrice burst into tears over the phone, unable to speak. Ruiz simply said, "We found Ethan." On the other end was prolonged sobbing, closing 26 years of silence. While awaiting supplemental forensics results, Ruiz and prosecutor Vaughn finalized the file for submission to the Michigan Attorney General's office, requesting a state-level reopening. The final line in the report stated clearly, "Combined DNA results and newly discovered scene, the Ethan Rowe case meets elements for first-degree murder. Recommend initiating criminal prosecution investigation." On July 18, 2023, the official reopening order was signed. The Brightmoor house was designated a state-level crime scene. Security forces erected barriers around the property, and surveillance cameras were installed for 24/7 monitoring. Ruiz and the forensics team were the last to leave the scene that day. Before getting in the car, she turned back to look at the dark wall cavity in the basement. The inscription, "I've done 500 reps, Dad," was still clear under the flashlight. No one knew exactly under what circumstances Ethan wrote it, fear, pain, or despair, but to Ruiz, it was the final proof of truth. The child had been forced to exercise to exhaustion right in his own home. 26 years later, the truth had escaped the cold cement and returned to the light. And from that day, the Ethan Rowe case was no longer a name in a cold file, but a state-level reopened murder case, with determination not to let any more clues be buried under Detroit soil again. After the Rowe house basement was sealed, all evidence was transported to the Lansing Forensics Laboratory for in-depth analysis. Detective Dana Ruiz coordinated with the expert team to determine the cause of Ethan's death and find evidence linking Lyndon Rowe to the construction of the secret wall cavity. The evidence was divided into 4 groups: building materials, household items, organic materials, and residual chemical samples. Ruiz paid special attention to the cement layer sealing the wall cavity. Analysis results showed it was quickset cement, mixed in an unusual ratio, combined with Glidden interior paint and silver gray, the exact brand common in late 1990s Detroit. Retail system data retrieval indicated that Home Depot Detroit West Branch had sold exactly these 2 materials to Lyndon Rowe on February 4, 1997, just 4 days before Ethan's disappearance. A copy of the old receipt was still stored in the store chain's accounting archives. The purchase list included 4 bags of quickset cement, 2 cans of Glidden silver gray paint, 6 sheets of moisture-resistant plywood, 2 boxes of Decon rat poison. Lyndon's signature matched the handwriting sample in his vehicle registration records. Ruiz knew this was a key piece. The materials for building the wall cavity were purchased right before the disappearance. The forensics team continued examining the old blanket samples and canned food tins found in the basement. Trace analysis revealed warfarin anticoagulant, the main active ingredient in Decon rat poison, adhered to the fabric fibers. Forensic pathologist Elaine Porter noted, low dosage, but if exposed continuously in a confined space, inhalation can lead to internal bleeding, chronic poisoning. Ruiz went silent. She remembered the carved inscription on the wall, "I've done 500 reps, Dad," and realized Ethan had been forced to exercise in that poisoned room. In the cement dust, they also found traces of warfarin mixed with paint powder, proving Lyndon had scattered rat poison around the area before sealing it. When cross-referenced with the receipt, everything matched. Ruiz noted, Ethan had been passively exposed to warfarin for an extended period before death. Analysis of the exercise equipment, the dumbbell bar and PVC pipe, showed dried tissue residue and old oxidation marks. Round scratches on the bar ends matched indentations on the wall where the inscription was carved. The report concluded, evidence was used frequently in a confined space, consistent with a pattern of forced physical training. Ruiz immediately compiled all data and presented it to prosecutor Eric Vaughn. When he read the materials purchase receipt section, Vaughn asked, "Do we have evidence Lyndon built it directly?" Ruiz replied, "Yes. His fingerprints appear on the dumbbell bar and plastic bin lid. Materials match what he bought on February 4, 97. Vaughn nodded, "That's enough basis for prosecution." The lab continued testing material age. Carbon decay method showed the cavity cement was mixed in early February 1997, matching exactly the time of Ethan's disappearance. Once again, all traces led back to the same timeline and the same person. When the comprehensive report was sent back to Lansing, the conclusion stated clearly, the confinement environment in the wall cavity caused death due to exhaustion and warfarin poisoning. Construction materials matched the purchase receipt from Lyndon Rowe at Home Depot Detroit West Branch on February 4, 1997. Additionally, dust samples in the plastic bin contained traces of calcium phosphate, characteristic of human bone decomposed in a dry, sealed environment, reinforcing the conclusion of a body presence before the basement was sealed. Ruiz carefully arranged all evidence into a logical chain. Ethan and Lyndon's DNA on the PVC pipe, likely murder weapon. Wall cavity built with materials Lyndon bought right before the disappearance. Rat poison traces matching the product he purchased. Mechanical scratches proving forced exercise. Lyndon's fingerprints on the dumbbell bar and plastic bin. The chain of facts had no gaps. To Ruiz, this was no longer speculation, but airtight evidence for first-degree murder. On July 30, 2023, she sent the final report to the Michigan Attorney General's office, along with a request to upgrade the charge to first-degree murder, confinement and poisoning. Her summary was just one line. The victim didn't disappear. The boy died right under his own house, confined, forced to exercise, and exposed to toxins by his own father. That evening, Ruiz returned alone to the cold case unit office. She looked up at the whiteboard where Ethan's old class photo was pinned, next to the red note, cause exhaustion plus warfarin exposure. Everything once deemed non-criminal was now clear, and for the first time in 26 years, the truth about Ethan Rowe's death had a name, a reason, and someone to hold accountable. After completing the examination of the physical evidence, Detective Dana Ruiz still felt the Ethan Rowe case file was missing one piece. She recalled the words of the former warehouse employee Harold Dunn, who had mentioned a lost workout schedule from 2005. One evening, Ruiz returned to evidence storage warehouse number 47, the place holding thousands of dusty boxes of files from the 1990s. Amid the dimly lit rows of shelves, she found a sealed box with a faded label, Rowe_E97 missed items. Inside were a few empty plastic bags, a yellowed old inventory list, and a thin paper envelope wedged between crime scene photo logs. The faded writing read, "Exercise sheet, basement." She opened it. Inside was a handwritten sheet in blue ballpoint pen, clearly a child's handwriting. The title, Ethan's Weekly Routine. Below it listed, push-ups 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, 100 pull-ups, 100 PVC swings, 100. The final line was underlined boldly in different handwriting, 500 reps, until he learns. Ruiz gripped the paper tightly. This handwriting matched the carving in the basement wall. The boy has done 500 times. She understood this wasn't exercise, but punishment. DNA testing showed traces of Ethan Rowe's sweat, and a smudge of oil matching Leon Rowe's DNA at the corner of the paper, evidence that both had handled the schedule. Ruiz felt the cruelty in every number. While reviewing the files again, she discovered an additional black VHS tape labeled, Home 297's, basement footage. No one had ever mentioned it. Ruiz sent the tape to the technical restoration department. 3 days later the data was recovered. The grainy images were nearly gone, but the audio was clear. In a segment over a minute long, the sound of metal clanging rhythmically echoed, clank, clank, and a child's voice counted softly, trembling, 36, 37. Then a man's voice interrupted, dry and cold, louder, count louder. After that came sobs and gasping breaths. Ruiz sat motionless. No visuals, but the audio was enough to make her feel suffocated. She forwarded the file to the Forensic Audio Lab at Michigan State University for spectrogram analysis. The results: the metal spectrogram matched 97% with the sound sample from the PVC pipe, evidence containing DNA from Ethan and Leon. Background noise analysis also detected the ticking of a West clock's clock, a model produced only until 1996, helping pinpoint the recording time to early 1997. The final report stated, audio matches physical evidence PVC pipe, adult male voice has phonetic characteristics matching 89% with Leon Rowe's voice from the 1997 interview. Ruiz reread the conclusion. This was the first audio evidence proving forced exercise behavior, and the child's counting voice was identified as Ethan's. When the recording was played in the cold case unit's meeting room, everyone fell silent. Ethan's faint counting echoed through the speakers, halting and fading. Prosecutor Eric Vaughn said only one thing: "We're no longer talking about suspicion. This is the victim's testimony." Continuing to examine the tape, the tech team discovered a few faint bright frames, flickering fluorescent light like the basement's. In a few frames, a small shadow appeared about 4'9" tall, the exact height of 12-year-old Ethan. Ruiz requested this imagery be kept confidential, stored only in internal files. She then combed through the entire evidence warehouse again. A mislabeling error on the box had caused the workout schedule and tape to be stored in the wrong place for over 20 years. That negligence had once frozen the entire case. Ruiz looked at the label on the box, Rowe_E97, and felt as if someone was looking back at her from across time. On August 10, 2023, she completed the supplementary evidence report and sent it to the Michigan Attorney General's office. In the conclusion section, Ruiz wrote, "The workout schedule and VHS tape are direct evidence of confinement, forced labor, and abuse. The metal spectrogram matches the PVC pipe, evidence with DNA from the victim, and suspect Lyndon Rowe." She had the tape resealed in a new plastic box, labeled Rowe Case, Exhibit 47A, Audio Evidence. Ruiz stared at those words for a long time, faintly hearing that faint counting voice in her mind. 26 years later, a child's voice was finally found again, recounting the story of his final days, in the very basement where he was forced to do 500 times. In mid-August 2023, after the physical and audio evidence had been confirmed, Detective Dana Ruiz was ordered to locate and meet Patrice Rowe, Ethan's mother, the only living person who had been in the house in 1997. Patrice now lived in Toledo, Ohio, avoiding media contact for over 20 years. Her small house sat along the roadside, with an old wooden door and overgrown grass. When Ruiz mentioned Ethan's name, Patrice's cloudy eyes welled up. "I knew this day would come," she said softly, then invited her inside. The living room held only one photo frame, Ethan smiling on his green bicycle. After a few minutes of silence, Ruiz turned on the recorder. "I just want the truth," she said. Patrice nodded, her voice trembling. "Leon always believed strength was discipline. He wanted Ethan to become a real man. It started with evening workouts in the basement, but then it became punishment." According to her account, whenever Ethan made a small mistake, low grades lying or forgetting chores, Leon would drag him down to the basement. He made him count every push-up, every PVC swing against the wall. If he cried, he'd add more reps. Patrice bowed her head. "At first I thought it was just strictness, but then I heard him crying every night. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't dare intervene." Ruiz asked, "Did you see him lock the basement door?" Patrice nodded slightly. "About a month before Ethan disappeared, he started locking him down there every night. He said to teach him discipline. I heard heavy breathing, then silence. He told me not to go down, that he was resting. I believed, or tried to believe." She described how Ethan gradually grew thin and weak, his skin pale, lips cracked. "One evening, he whispered to me, 'I don't want to count anymore.' I hugged him, but Leon saw. He dragged him away, saying he hasn't learned yet. That was the last time I heard his voice." Ruiz asked about the night of February 8, 1997, the night Ethan vanished. Patrice closed her eyes, hands shaking. It was snowing. "Leon told him to go down to the basement for more training. I heard him count up to somewhere around 400 something, then nothing. When I asked, he said he ran away out of shame. The next morning, Ethan was gone. I wanted to call the police, but Leon forbade it. He threatened that if I spoke, they'd think I was an accomplice." Ruiz stayed silent, letting her continue. 3 days later, Leon bought cement, wood and paint. I heard drilling downstairs. The paint smell was so strong. He said he was fixing the plumbing, but after that the basement door was locked. I never got to open it again. She looked straight at Ruiz, her voice breaking. "I knew he didn't run away. I could feel my son was still there, but I was scared. Leon controlled everything. Money, phone, even my words. When the police came, he sat right beside me. I only dared to nod." Ruiz pulled out the workout schedule found in the evidence warehouse and showed it to her. The final line, 500 reps, "until he learns," made Patrice burst into tears. "Yes, that's the one." Leon made Ethan write it and hang it in the basement. Every time he finished, he'd make him sign it. He said, when he reached 500 times, he'd be released. When Ruiz mentioned the VHS tape, Patrice nodded faintly. "Leon recorded it. He said he wanted to monitor progress. I never watched, just heard the metal clanging, and my son's counting." "I can't forget that sound," Ruiz asked. "Do you believe Ethan died during the forced training?" Patrice was silent for a long time, then replied, "I believe so." He was getting weaker every day. One night he passed out while counting. Leon panicked, but didn't call for help. He was afraid of getting caught. "I think he buried him right there in the basement, and sealed it up." A heavy atmosphere enveloped the room. Ruiz asked her final question, "What do you want me to record?" Patrice looked at Ethan's photo, that he didn't run away. He just wanted to rest. Ruiz turned off the recorder. In the witness statement transcript, Patrice Rowe, August 18, 2023, she wrote, "Witness confirms Leon Rowe regularly forced his son into physical training in the basement, treating it as punishment. Confinement lasted months. Victim died from exhaustion during forced exercise. After discovery, suspect used cement and paint to conceal the body." As Ruiz stood to leave, Patrice grabbed her hand, voice choked. "Can you tell them Ethan wasn't bad? He was just scared." Ruiz nodded gently. "I promise." Outside, Toledo rain fell quietly. In the car, Ruiz played the recording again, listening to the mother's voice, trembling, guilty, but truthful. The final piece had appeared. Now the case was no longer just cold evidence in files. It had breath. The story of a mother who had lived 26 years with the haunting knowledge, knowing the truth, but not daring to speak it. And that testimony completed the picture of the crime, confirming that Ethan Rowe didn't disappear, but was confined and tortured to death by his own father, in the dark basement, right under the house he once called home. On the morning of August 22, 2023, after 26 years of intermittent investigation, the Michigan Attorney General's office officially issued an arrest warrant for Leon Rowe on charges: first-degree murder, unlawful confinement, and tampering with evidence. Michigan State Police coordinated with the Dayton, Ohio Police Department, where Leon now resided, to execute the warrant. At 63 years old, he lived alone in a suburban house, working as a maintenance man at a small garage. At 6 a.m., as Leon stepped out to his car, two agents approached. Ruiz, present with the arrest team, read the warrant. Leon asked calmly, "What for?" Ruiz replied, "For the death of Ethan Rowe." During the search, the investigative team seized a black leather-bound notebook, a Timex watch covered in cement, and a wooden box containing old materials. Leon's workspace was meticulously neat, chillingly so. In the notebook, Ruiz flipped to lines reading, "Discipline equals repetition. He must finish. Pain builds strength." The final pages had a table, E100, 200, 500, matching the previously found workout schedule, 500 reps, until he learns. The handwriting matched Leon's signature on a 1997 Home Depot receipt. The old Timex watch had dried cement streaks, and a quick examination showed it used the same quickset type as the wall cavity sealant in the basement. The wooden box also contained a Glidden silver paint can, moisture-resistant plywood scraps, and a short PVC pipe segment, all matching the materials and brands purchased at Detroit Home Depot on April 2, 1997. At Dayton headquarters, Leon was interrogated for 3 hours. He denied all charges. "I didn't kill anyone. It was training. I wanted my son to be stronger." When Ruiz asked, "You call locking a child in the basement training?" Leon replied, "He had to learn to endure. I was just teaching discipline." Ruiz presented photos of the evidence, the blood-stained PVC pipe, and DNA results. He just shook his head. "I don't remember. Maybe he got scraped." When she played the VHS tape with Ethan's faint counting, and the man's shout, "Count louder," Leon frowned, but held firm. "I don't remember. Maybe we were training." Prosecutor Eric Vaughn allowed Ruiz to disclose the matching results. Leon and Ethan's DNA both appeared on the PVC pipe. Cement on the watch and home materials matched the basement wall cavity cement. The training notebook matched the workout schedule and Patrice's testimony. Voice on the VHS tape matched 89% with Leon's 1997 sample. Upon hearing the report, Leon fell silent, hands clenched. Finally he said, "I didn't want to hurt him. I just wanted him to obey." Ruiz replied, "You made him count to his own death." That afternoon, police searched the garage where Leon worked. In a tool cabinet, they found a Glidden paint bucket, nylon rope coil, and a steel bar with old cement. All samples matched product codes with the old Detroit evidence. By evening, Prosecutor Vaughn announced to the press, "DNA, material and audio evidence has confirmed Leon Rowe as the perpetrator in the murder of his son Ethan Rowe in 1997. The suspect is charged with first-degree murder." Leon was extradited from Dayton to Wayne County Detention Center. As he stepped out of the vehicle, reporters' flashes blazed. One asked, "Do you regret it?" Leon replied calmly, "I was just teaching him to be strong." In the cold case unit meeting room, Ruiz detailed the arrest. On the table lay the evidence: notebook, Timex watch, silver paint can, PVC pipe. "They all say the same thing," she said. "Ethan died by his own father's hand." The room was silent, only the hum of the AC and cold white lights. The next day, headlines blared: "Father arrested in 1997, Brightmoor cold case, DNA proves murder." TV news replayed footage of 4180 Broad Street, with red crime scene text. Detroit residents were stunned. They had once believed Leon innocent since no body was found. Now the truth was exposed. He had lived among them for 26 years, hiding his crime in silence. That evening, Ruiz returned to the office, looking at the caseboard, Ethan's photo, the text codes, exhaustion, plus warfarin exposure, and now a new line: suspect in custody. She knew the journey wasn't over. Trial lay ahead, but justice had begun to move. In the final report to the state attorney general, Ruiz wrote, "Leon Rowe arrested in Dayton, Ohio. Seized evidence: training notebook, cement-covered Timex watch, quickset and Glidden materials, matches 1997 scene. Suspect's statements completely contradict DNA, audio, and witness testimony data. Sufficient basis for first-degree murder charge." 26 years later, the father who once forced his son to count to 500 times was finally handcuffed. And in Detroit, the Ethan Rowe case, once thought forgotten, had become a symbol that justice never sleeps. After Leon Rowe's arrest, the Michigan Cold Case Unit continued to meticulously examine the new evidence to strengthen the charges. This time, the focus was on handwriting and paper documents to clearly establish the connection between Leon and the inscriptions found in the basement. Detective Dana Ruiz collaborated with handwriting expert Harold Finch, who had worked on numerous federal cold cases. 3 items were placed on the examination table: the workout notebook, the inscription carved on the basement wall, "I've done enough 500 times," and a small handwritten note discovered under the concrete floor. This note was found during the final inspection, stuck between 2 layers of concrete, yellowed, with a torn corner, and the writing faded by time. Dr. Finch magnified the details and compared each stroke to Leon's signature from the 1997 records. The results matched perfectly: a 17-degree rightward slant, heavy pressure on the letter H, and the characteristic connection of O to N. "It couldn't be anyone else," he said. The wall carving and the notes in the notebook were both written by Leon Rowe. Chemical analysis determined that the carving was made while the cement was still wet, proving that the inscription, "I've done enough 500 times," was written right after Leon finished the burial. The silver paint composition in the carving groove matched the Glidden silver sample taken from his house. Ruiz noted in the file, "The inscription is declarative, ending the abusive behavior, not a memorial." Most importantly, it was Ethan's handwritten note. Under ultraviolet light, the faint writing became clear. "If I stop, Dad will be angry. I'm so tired, but I don't want to be punished." Using liquid chromatography, the Lansing Forensics Lab identified the ink as Bic crystal blue, produced in late 1996. The chemical structure of the paper and cellulose glue indicated an age of over 25 years, perfectly matching the time of Ethan's disappearance. There was no possibility of it being planted later. The writing was shaky, interrupted, with the strokes fading toward the end. The FBI analyst in Quantico concluded, the writer was in a state of exhaustion and fear, with slow speed and lack of muscle coordination. These are clear signs of a victim under duress. Ruiz looked at the small piece of paper through the sealed bag, speechless. She wrote in the report, the note reveals the victim's psychology, fear, compliance, depletion of strength. It is direct evidence of prolonged coercive behavior. At the same time, the handwriting analysis in the workout notebook revealed Leon's obsession with the concept of discipline. Pain builds strength. He must finish. No excuses. These lines, combined with the calendar sheet, 500 reps, until he learns, formed a chain of evidence showing that the training was actually systematic abusive behavior. From the examination results, Ruiz's team reconstructed the final timeline. Early February 1997, Leon purchased cement, PVC pipe, paint, and wood. February 8, Ethan died from exhaustion and rat poisoning. February 9, 10, Leon buried the body, covered it with cement, and carved the inscription, "I've done enough 500 times. During that process, Ethan's note fell to the floor and was covered by the cement layer. The paint sample and the carving, the ink sample, the paper, along with the handwriting, connected the forensic chain, from the behavior, tools, to the psychological traces of the victim. Upon completing the examination, Ruiz presented the report to prosecutor Eric Vaughn. He read in silence for a long time, then said, "Now we have the boy's final voice, not just evidence, but testimony from the victim." The case was transferred to the Michigan State Court, with a file over 600 pages thick. The summary report stated clearly, the wall carving and handwriting in the notebook matched Leon Rowe's strokes. Ethan's note was written during the time of his disappearance. The chain of physical evidence showed prolonged abusive physical and psychological coercive behavior. Prosecutor Vaughn signed the confirmation. The chain of examinations proves intentional, repeated behavior over many months, leading to the death of Ethan Rowe. That evening, Ruiz sat alone in her office, looking at the scan of the note on the screen. The faint lines from a 12-year-old boy stood out against the cold white background. She whispered, "You didn't stop, Ethan. But now, justice won't stop either." Outside the window, Detroit's lights reflected on the rain-wet street. On the desk, the small evidence bag labeled Evidence 47C. Ethan's note lay next to the thick file. In the silence, Ruiz felt it clearly. This case not only proved a crime, but also restored the voice to the child silenced for 26 years. And from here, those trembling strokes would become the final sharp point, ending the circle of lies named Leon Rowe. On September 12, 2023, nearly 3 weeks after the handwriting examination concluded, Leon Rowe was transferred from the Wayne County Detention Center to Interrogation Room 3 of the Cold Case Unit. The small room had gray walls and cold fluorescent lighting. Detective Dana Ruiz sat across from him, flanked by prosecutor Eric Vaughn and the recording technician. On the table, they placed in front of Leon copies of the wall carving, "I've done enough 500 times," Ethan's note, and photos of the blood-stained PVC pipe. Ruiz began in a calm, low voice, "Mr. Leon, today we just want to hear the truth from you. All the evidence has been confirmed. I need to know what really happened to Ethan that night." Leon was silent for a very long time, his eyes fixed on the table. His breathing was rapid, but his gaze remained proud. "I didn't hurt him," he said softly. "I just wanted him to be strong. He was too weak, too quick to give up." Ruiz slid the photo of the note toward him. "And this," the boy wrote, "if I stop, Dad will be angry. Do you call that strong?" Leon looked at the paper, frowning slightly, then turned away. "Did he really write that?" Ruiz replied, in his own handwriting, confirmed written that night. The atmosphere was heavy. Vaughn spoke up. "We know you left the boy in the basement for hours, without food or water. We also have the toxicology results. Ethan absorbed a small amount of warfarin, the substance in the rat poison you bought on February 5, 1997. Do you want to explain why?" Leon responded slowly. "I did use that stuff in the garage. Maybe he inhaled dust, or touched it with his hands and licked them. I didn't mean to." Ruiz looked straight into his eyes. "But you knew he was weak, knew he was gasping for breath, and yet you didn't call for help." Leon clenched his fists, nails digging into his skin. "I thought he just fainted," he said, his voice breaking. "I shook him forever, he wouldn't wake up. I panicked, I didn't know what to do." Ruiz continued steadily. "You knew what to do. You bought cement, wood, paint, you buried him right in your own house." Leon fell silent. The recording machine clicked once. Ruiz opened the photo of the dugout wall cavity. "This is where you hid your son. You even carved, 'I've done enough' 500 times. Can you tell me why you wrote that sentence?" Leon exhaled sharply, his voice hoarse. "Because, that was what I always made him repeat. Every time he got weak, I told him, 'Do 500 more times, until you learn.' When I finished writing that, I thought he would forgive me. I was wrong." Vaughn interjected. "Do you admit that Ethan died in the basement because of your confinement?" Leon nodded slowly. "Yes, I locked him up, but I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted to teach him endurance. I thought if he got through that night, he wouldn't be afraid of anything anymore. But he didn't wake up." Ruiz said nothing, just played the audio recording of the counting from the VHS tape. A child's weak voice echoed, 480, 482, then silence, followed by a man's sharp voice, "Keep counting, Ethan," the voice matching Leon's. He closed his eyes, his hands trembling. "I remember now," he whispered. "He said I can't breathe. I told him to rest a few minutes. When I came back, he was motionless." Vaughn asked, "Why didn't you call 911? Leon was silent for a long time, then replied, "I was scared. I knew if they came, they'd say I killed my son. I couldn't bear that thought. I thought, if I hid it, maybe I could forget." Ruiz opened the final file folder, toxicology report, DNA results, Home Depot receipts, workout notebook. "Everything you did is in here. No accident, no training. It was deliberate abusive behavior." Leon bowed his head. A tear rolled down his wrinkled cheek. "I have no more reason to lie," he said softly. "I left him there. I sat outside the door listening. No more sounds. I touched his neck. It was cold. I thought, maybe he still had breath. But when I put my ear down, I only heard silence. I got a blanket to cover him, then went to get the cement bags." He raised his head, his voice raspy. "I remember when I carved that sentence, my hands were shaking. I thought if I wrote it out, God would forgive. But from that day, I haven't slept a peaceful night." Ruiz slowly pushed the statement form toward him. "Do you want to sign this confession? The entire content is recorded exactly as you said." Leon looked at the paper for a very long time, then picked up the pen. His eyes were wet, the handwriting shaky, but still clear. "I, Leon Rowe, admit to confining my son Ethan Rowe in the basement, leaving him to exhaustion until death. I did not call for help. I take full responsibility." After signing, he dropped the pen, leaned back in the chair, exhaling as if releasing a burden. Ruiz closed the file and stood up. "Justice for Ethan starts here," she said. Before being led out of the room, Leon looked up at the white ceiling light, and said softly, "I just wanted him to learn to be strong. I didn't know I killed the very thing I loved." The door closed. The sound of handcuffs clinked dryly. On the table, the statement with the shaky signature was still wet with ink, ending 26 years of silence, and marking the belated confession of the father who lost his soul in the Detroit basement long ago. After Leon Rowe's confession, the Michigan Cold Case Unit sent the old VHS tape to the Digital Forensics Lab in Lansing for image recovery. The tape, found in a moldy plastic box in the basement, was severely damaged. Technicians spent days cleaning and magnetically reconstructing each segment. On the fourth day, the first images appeared, blurry, noisy, but enough to silence everyone in the room. On the screen, dim light from a hanging bulb. In the center frame was Ethan Rowe, the 12-year-old boy, skinny, in a sweat-soaked white t-shirt. He was doing push-ups, counting in a hoarse voice. 271, 272. A man's voice came from off-frame. Don't stop until 500. The sharp metallic thud echoed, thwack, matching exactly the sound spectrum of the PVC pipe from the evidence. Every time Ethan weakened, the thwack sounded again, followed by a shout, louder, Ethan. The boy tried to continue counting, his voice fading, his breathing ragged. At the 8th minute, Ethan collapsed, his body curling up. At that moment, Leon Rowe entered the frame, wearing a gray tank top, holding the plastic pipe, his face cold. He bent down, shaking his son's shoulder. Get up, don't disappoint me. The boy didn't respond. Leon stepped back, arms crossed, continuing to watch as the faint gasping sounds gradually faded. That was the final moment of the tape. The lab immediately backed up the data and created 3 master copies. The technical report affirmed the images were not edited in the correct 1997 VHS format. The metallic sounds matched the frequency of the evidence PVC pipe. The voice matched 98.7% with Leon Rowe's voice sample. The victim showed clear exhaustion and fear. When Ruiz reviewed the footage, she sat motionless. In the pallid screen light, Ethan, the boy who had only existed in files, now appeared real to the point of heartbreak. At the end of the video, the frame tilted slightly as Leon pulled a chair closer, bent over his son's body, and turned off the camera. The timestamp displayed, 23:46 on February 8, 1997, matching the time Leon's Timex watch stopped, due to cement exposure. Prosecutor Eric Vaughn watched the video for the first time with Ruiz. When the metallic thuds rang out, he said only one sentence, "This is damning evidence, no longer speculation." The tape was filed in court, under Code Exhibit A, primary evidence. In the report submitted to the court, the examination lab stated clearly, the video records continuous physical coercion. The victim was forced to exercise under Leon Rowe's supervision. The sounds, voice and physical evidence match. The tape ends when the victim loses mobility. A recovered supplemental segment at the end of the tape showed Leon carrying cement bags, wiping the basement floor. The light flickered as he bent down to the wall cavity, matching exactly the structure found at the 2023 scene. On October 2, 2023, the video was presented at the Michigan District Court. The courtroom was packed, lights dimmed, only the blue glow of the projector remaining. Ethan's counting voice echoed, 295, 296, followed by the sharp metallic thuds. Several jurors had to turn away. When the video ended, Vaughn said slowly, "This is not training. This is evidence of murder." Leon sat in the defendant's box, eyes closed tight. Reporters noted the moment his hands trembled, but he said not a word. After the video concluded, the prosecution submitted the accompanying audio and image data reports. Every connection, from the PVC thuds, the voice, the lighting, and the timing, proved the continuity of the behavioral chain. Michigan media reported uniformly, recovered VHS reveals, final moments of Ethan Rowe, father seen overseeing discipline before death. The Detroit community was shaken. Many who once believed Leon was a victim of misunderstanding, now had to face the truth displayed on screen. In the cold case office, Ruiz reviewed it one last time to write the official report. She paused on the final frame. Ethan collapsed, dim light reflecting off the cement wall where Leon had carved "I've done enough 500 times." Ruiz said softly, "Now you've really done enough, Ethan." In the quiet night of Detroit, that VHS tape was not just technical evidence, it was the final voice of the child, forced to silence for 26 years. And that very image became the central evidence of the trial, forcing Lyndon Rowe to confront not just his guilt, but an indelible truth. In March 2024, nearly a year after the case was reopened, the Wayne County Court in Detroit opened the official trial for the state of Michigan versus Lyndon Rowe. The case drew special attention from national media, not only because of its brutality, but also because the VHS video was regarded as one of the rare visual pieces of evidence in the history of cold case investigations in the United States. The courthouse on snow-covered Gratiot Avenue. On the morning of the opening day, dozens of reporters crowded in front of the gate. Police set up security barriers, and families who had lost children to abuse also attended, carrying photos of their own children as a show of support for Ethan's justice. Judge Marianne Keller presided over the trial, known for her calm and stern demeanor. In the opening statements, prosecutor Eric Vaughn stood up and began, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is not just about a missing child, it is the story of a boy who was imprisoned, tortured, and killed by the very father who was supposed to protect him. The crime was hidden in the shadows for 26 years, until the truth was restored through science and the perseverance of an investigative unit." Vaughn presented the entire timeline of the case, starting from February 8, 1997, the day Ethan disappeared, up to 2023 when the body was discovered in the basement. He projected on a large screen a diagram of the evidence, the blood-stained PVC pipe, the workout logbook, the calendar page 500 reps, until he learns, Ethan's handwritten note, the cement samples, the Home Depot receipt, and finally the video footage. The courtroom fell silent as the video played. The sound of metal clanging echoed, Ethan's faint counting voice and Lyndon's shout, "Keep counting," caused many to bow their heads. Judge Keller ordered the tape stopped at the final frame. Ethan collapsing on the floor, Lyndon standing right behind him, his shadow cast on the wall. "This image," Vaughn said, "is living proof that it was not an accident, but intentional, systematic conduct leading to death." When the defense took its turn, attorney Harold Beck argued that Lyndon had no intent to kill his son, claiming he was merely practicing misguided physical training. Beck cited Lyndon's cooperation and guilty plea as evidence of genuine remorse. But the prosecution immediately countered, remorse after 26 years of silence cannot erase the fact that he let his son die without calling for help, then buried the body to continue living as if nothing had happened. On the third day of the trial, Detective Dana Ruiz was called as the key witness. She took the stand, holding the case file. Her voice was calm but firm. "I am the one who reopened the Ethan Rowe case, file number 97BM0218. All physical evidence examined with modern DNA and audio technology confirms the victim did not go missing, but was held captive and died in the basement of his father's home." She described the process of following leads, recovering the blood-stained PVC pipe, cement materials, toxicology results showing traces of warfarin, and Ethan's handwritten note. When Vaughn asked, "In your opinion, what is the most important evidence?" Ruiz replied without hesitation, "The video itself. Because in it, we not only hear the crime, but also the real fear of a child." The defense tried to cross-examine Ruiz about the possibility of errors in audio analysis equipment, but she presented a detailed technical report, collision frequencies, audio delays, and a 98.7% voice match to Lyndon, dismissing the counter-argument on the spot. On the fourth day, Patrice Rowe, Ethan's mother, took the stand as a witness. She trembled as she entered, clutching a photo of her son. The prosecutor asked, "Do you believe your husband accidentally caused the death?" Patrice bowed her head. "No, he knew my son couldn't take it. I begged him to stop, but he said, 'He has to learn to endure.' I heard my son crying in the basement all through the last night." The answer silenced the courtroom. Some people burst into tears. Leon, sitting in the defendant's box, only bowed his head, saying nothing. The trial lasted 12 days. Each piece was presented: DNA, receipts, materials, journals, wall carvings, video, and Leon's own confession. Everything matched without a single discrepancy. On March 14, 2024, the jury was sent to deliberate in closed session. After more than 6 hours, they returned to the courtroom. The foreman stood and read the verdict. On the charge of second-degree murder, we find the defendant Leon Rowe guilty. On the charge of first-degree child abuse, we find him guilty. Judge Keller ordered the defendant to stand. Her voice rang out clearly: "Leon Rowe, you took the life of a child, your own flesh and blood, through cruelty and silence. The justice of the state of Michigan may be late, but it never forgets. The court sentences you to life imprisonment without parole on the second-degree murder charge, and 30 years in prison for child abuse, to be served concurrently." Leon listened silently, his face expressionless. As the police escorted him, he turned back to look at the gallery, where Patrice sat, tears streaming down her face. He said nothing, only nodded slightly, and walked away. Afterward, Patrice Rowe was separately prosecuted for accessory, after the fact, and perjury in 1997. The court noted she had been controlled, threatened, and subjected to prolonged emotional abuse. The prosecution recommended leniency, and Judge Keller ruled, defendant Patrice Rowe is sentenced to 5 years of conditional probation and 200 hours of community service, with no incarceration. You were silent for too long, but you finally spoke the truth. That is the redemption the court recognizes. The trial ended in silence. The press called it the Detroit discipline case, a case marking a turning point in Michigan's cold case investigation history. After the trial, Ruiz left the courtroom as heavy snow fell. She looked at the quiet crowd outside, some carrying white flowers placed under a small handwritten sign, "Justice for Ethan." In her final report to the Attorney General's office, Ruiz wrote, "Case 97 BM0218 is closed with a life sentence for Leon Rowe. All evidence, DNA, physical items, toxicology, video, and testimony, has been verified. The cold case unit has completed its mission after 26 years. But more importantly, Ethan Rowe's name has been restored in the legal records, from missing juvenile to homicide victim." That afternoon, local television replayed footage of Ruiz leaving the courthouse, snow on her shoulders. Behind her was a banner: "Truth never expires. Truth never expires." And in the cold gray light of Detroit, justice had finally found Ethan Rowe, the boy once forced to count 500 times to learn obedience, now remembered with respect and sorrow. After the verdict was handed down, Detective Dana Ruiz returned to the cold case unit office in Lansing. On her desk was a thick stack of files, 26 years of investigation, hundreds of pages of reports, dozens of pieces of evidence. Her final task was to complete the comprehensive forensic report for the Rowe case, a document that would be archived in the national database and used for cold case investigation training across the United States. The report bore the FBI case integration number #CC 9723R, consisting of 4 sections: modern DNA analysis, trace toxicology, AI handwriting match, and forensic audio restoration. Ruiz and her team of specialists spent nearly 3 weeks compiling the data, ensuring every detail was standardized according to federal guidelines. Section I, Modern DNA Analysis. Samples including the PVC pipe, Timex watch, blanket and bone fragments, were tested using next-generation sequencing, NGS technology. This allowed the forensic team to precisely identify the biological relationship between Leon and Ethan at the microallele level, enabling a 3-generation genetic profile reconstruction, a significant advance over the old STR techniques. The report confirmed that Ethan's blood on the PVC pipe was mixed with Leon's epithelial cells, direct evidence of physical interaction during the abuse. Section 2. Trace toxicology. From blanket fabric and bone samples, the toxicology lab detected traces of warfarin, the active ingredient in the Decon rat poison that Leon purchased in February 1997. LCMS/MS, liquid chromatography, mass spectrometry technology, identified low concentrations sufficient to cause blood clotting disorders with prolonged exposure. The report concluded the victim's death was a combination of exhaustion, dehydration, and passive warfarin exposure. This section was later quoted verbatim in federal court files on standards for toxicology analysis in child abuse cases. Section 3. AI handwriting match. This was the section that drew special FBI attention. Ruiz sent scans of the logbook, wall carvings and Ethan's note to the AI handwriting lab at Quantico. Forensic AI 3.2 software, developed in collaboration between the FBI and MIT, used deep learning models to compare stroke patterns, pressure, and hand trajectories. The results showed a 99.3% match between the handwriting in the carving and Leon's 1997 document signature. The algorithm also reconstructed hand tremors, indicating the writer was in a high state of stress. This finding bolstered the argument that Leon carved the line, "I did 500 reps" right after hiding the body, in a state of panic. Section 5. Forensic audio restoration. The technical team used neural audio enhanced tools to clean and reconstruct the VHS tape. AI technology separated noise layers, restoring Ethan's and Leon's voices with nearly 97% accuracy. Spectral analysis revealed a 214 Hz collision frequency, matching the physical PVC pipe's acoustic profile exactly, a rare piece of evidence in cold cases. This audio segment was later incorporated into the Federal Law Enforcement Training Academy as a teaching sample for forensic sound correlation, on-scene audio matching. Ruiz compiled all the results into a complete forensic timeline, from behavior to physical evidence, material purchase, receipt verified timeline, coercive acts, captured on VHS tape, contact outcomes, mixed DNA, toxin traces, cover-up actions, handwriting match, materials, and audio. When submitting the report to the Michigan Attorney General's office, Ruiz added the final line, "Scientific evidence not only reconstructs the crime, but also restores the victim's voice." A month later, the FBI sent an official thank you letter, announcing that the Rowe case would be included in the 2025 Cold Case Investigation curriculum, as a prime example of combining digital forensics, AI and traditional investigation. At the press conference, the FBI spokesperson stated, "The Ethan Rowe case proves that no crime is too old to uncover the truth. Advances in science and human perseverance can awaken justice even after decades of burial." Back at the office, Ruiz looked up at the sealed case board, the words "case closed, homicide confirmed" in red. She turned off the light, standing silently before Ethan's photo on the wall. In the dim light, the boy smiled, his eyes bright as if never shrouded in darkness. The Rowe case closed not just with a life sentence, but with a shift in the investigative field's perspective. Every small trace, every faint sound, every trembling stroke of handwriting can speak for the lost. And that is what turned File 97BM0218 from a Detroit haunting into a symbol of resurrected justice in the modern forensic era. In June 2024, nearly 3 months after the trial, Detective Dana Ruiz drove back to the Brightmoor neighborhood, where it all began. The Detroit afternoon was cool, green trees casting shadows over the quiet street. The house at 4180 Lyndon Street remained sealed, boards nailed over the windows, the property of Detroit police. "Do not enter," sign leaning crookedly in the wind. Ruiz pushed open the rusted gate, stepping into the overgrown yard. The house stood silent, like a witness to a crime that had passed more than 2 decades ago. She walked around to the back, where Ethan's bike had been found in 1997, now just cracked, dry earth. As she opened the door, dust billowed up, the damp, cold air hitting her face. Under the stairs, the basement door was still there, now completely filled in. A smooth new layer of cement covered it entirely, the seams lighter than the old floor. Ruiz stood silently for a long time. This had once been the epicenter of the case, and the end of Ethan's childhood. She knelt slightly, touching the cold floor. In her mind, the counting from the video echoed again. 297, 298, then faded into silence. She looked up at the wall, where the line, "I did 500 reps" had been carved. Now it was just a pale cement patch, like a faint scar. The basement had been bleached clean, but its memories remained, like an indelible part of Detroit's history. Ruiz whispered softly, "Justice has come, Ethan." After the case, all evidence from the Rowe home was transferred to the Lansing Forensic Museum, becoming a permanent exhibit titled, "The Ethan Rowe Exhibit, Justice After 26 Years." In the center of the room stood the white PVC pipe, its end still stained with dark brown streaks, the first sample containing mixed father-son DNA. Beside it were the cement-crusted Timex watch, the gray blanket, and the old plastic bin seized from the basement. All were placed in humidity-controlled glass cases, softly lit with white light. A small inscription etched at the base of the display, collected at 4180 Lyndon Street, Detroit, February 1997, used in evidence to convict Leon Rowe, 2024. On the wall hung a dignified photo of Ethan Rowe, the 12-year-old boy with tousled hair, a gentle smile, and bright eyes. Below the photo was a quote from Ruiz: "Justice may take decades, but truth never decays. Justice may come late, but truth never rots." On the opening day of the exhibit, hundreds of Detroit residents attended, many from near Brightmoor, many carrying white flowers, including young forensic trainees. As the room lights dimmed, everyone stood in silence, gazing at the boy's photo. Ruiz gave a brief speech. Ethan never got the chance to speak his final words. "Our job is to make sure that voice is heard." After the ceremony, Ruiz stayed behind alone. She looked at each piece of evidence, items once symbols of crime, now lessons in justice. She recalled the first night's reopening the file, missing juvenile, Ethan Rowe, age 12, when that name was just faded ink in storage. Now it was etched again, clear, real, and voiced. That evening, Ruiz returned to Lyndon Street one last time. The sun had set, sunset spilling over the old rooftops. She stopped at the fence, pulling from her bag a photocopy of Ethan's photo, placing it in a plastic sleeve, and pinning it to the rotted wood by the window. "Now you've been heard, Ethan," she said softly. A light wind blew through, the sleeve rustling like a response. Ruiz walked to her car, started the engine. In the rearview mirror, she watched the house shrink, sunlight glinting off the yellow warning sign. On the drive back to Lansing, the radio aired a news bulletin. "The Ethan Rowe case has been added to the FBI's National Cold Case Training Program. Tonight the city of Detroit holds a memorial ceremony at Rouge Park." She smiled faintly, turned off the radio, letting the wind rush through the window. A week later, the cold case unit issued a notice closing file, 97 BM 0218. The final entry in the system read, "Case resolved. Justice delivered. Victim, Ethan Rowe, age 12. That afternoon, Ruiz sat in her office, sunlight streaming through the window onto Ethan's photo on the wall. The boy's face in the picture was bright, his eyes full of life, not the image from a missing persons file, but a symbol of belated justice. Outside, Detroit hummed on car horns, traffic, the flow of life. But at the end of Linden Avenue, the house at 4180 stood silent. Beneath the new cement floor, no more shadows or secrets, just a piece of earth and wind. The Rowe case ended not in forgetting, but in remembrance. Those pieces of evidence, those words, became reminders that no case truly ends until justice is found. Before leaving Lansing, Ruiz stopped by the Forensic Museum one last time. On the outer wall, a metal plaque was engraved, Ethan Rowe, 1985-1997. His story brought the truth to light. Ethan Rowe, 1985-1997. His story brought the truth to light. Ruiz gently touched the inscription, closing her eyes. In that quiet moment, she felt every sound, from the faint counting on the VHS tape, to the gavel's strike, harmonize into a final note. Justice had taken form, and in Detroit, the story of the boy forgotten in 1997 became a symbol of the belief that truth can be buried, but it never disappears. The Ethan Rowe story evokes a very American lesson: discipline cannot be a cover for abuse, and community, schools, the legal system and technology all have roles in saving lives. The specific details, the calendar 500 reps, until he learns, the PVC pipe with mixed father-son DNA, warfarin traces on the blanket, the restored VHS tape, with interrupted counting, and the file misplaced in the wrong box for 26 years, reflect common weaknesses in American life. Adults mistaking beating to obey, neighbors hesitant to intervene, and underfunded agencies delaying evidence testing. Lessons learned. 1. If you're a parent, building discipline must tie to safety, consent, and bodily respect. Any challenge causing pain, confinement, water denial, or do it until 500 reps is abuse. 2. If you're a teacher, coach, healthcare worker, mandated reporters under laws in many states, treat prolonged fatigue, repeated bruises, fear of mentioning the basement, or notes like, "If I stop, Dad will be mad," as red flags. Report immediately to CPS or 911. Don't negotiate privately. 3. For neighbors and friends, when you see a back door ajar on a snowy night, a child vanish, or hear strange metal clanging, call for a welfare check. Politeness can kill. 4. For agencies, the story reminds us to invest in evidence storage, DNA, tox testing, audio, video restoration tools, and AI handwriting analysis. A VHS tape, a cement-crusted Timex watch, or a child's note can change a verdict. Finally, as Detroit did with the Lansing Forensic Museum exhibit, tell victims' stories by their real names, so justice doesn't arrive late again. Thank you for following this journey to the end, in seeking justice for the boy Ethan Rowe, proof that truth, though buried, will one day be seen. Subscribe to the channel to join me in exploring more cold cases, where every small clue can illuminate belated justice for forgotten souls.